What's up guys, it's Alex, and today I've got a pretty cool video for you guys. Today we're going to be doing another fish catch breakdown. So a few months ago I did one of these with the big blue worm and a big old 6-pounder that I caught off of a dock. And in that video I broke down every aspect of the fish catch, from rod, reel, line, and bait to the way that the current was flowing and why that fish was orienting to the cover that it was. And today we're going to do that same style of video, but it's with a big old smallmouth that I caught on a small body crankbait just a few weeks ago. So hopefully you guys will enjoy today's episode. Guys, so before we actually get into breaking down this fish catching footage, I kind of want to lay out the stage for you guys, kind of tell you where we were fishing, why we were fishing there, the water conditions and the weather conditions, and how all those factors kind of join into the factors as far as the rod and the reel and everything, and actually getting that fish into the boat. So let's start with where we were fishing at. We were actually fishing below a dam discharge, and this dam that we were fishing below was discharging anywhere from 75,000 to 80,000 units of water per hour. And for you guys that have never fished below a dam or fished in a situation like that, that is quite a bit of water. It is enough that you will not be able to go back against the current using your trolling motor alone. You have to actually get on the big motor, run to a designated area, and then get on your trolling motor to just control yourself as that current pushes you downstream. And you guys will hear me say we were on a drift, and that's what that means. It means we ran to a designated area, put the trolling motor down, and are just using the trolling motor to kind of slow us down in areas that we want to slow down in and keep us either in a current seam or off the bank enough that we feel like we're effectively fishing for the fish that we're fishing for. And so that's kind of where we were at, what was going on there. It's fast, it's furious, it's a super fun way to catch fish just because that current, number one, the fish that live in that current are big and they are mean and they want to eat. And number two, just the speed at which you're fishing is awesome. If you love a reaction style bite and you love a power fishing kind of bite, it is something that I would suggest everybody try at some point if you can. Now, as for the weather conditions, we were dealing with highs in the mid 40s, lows in the mid 30s. When we got there, it was about 35, 40 degrees, and as the day went on, it peaked out at about 45. We started the morning with partly cloudy skies that broke free to high bluebird skies in the afternoon. We caught this fish about 9:15. This was actually on our very first drift down. Somewhere about mid-drift is when this fish bit, so we were still kind of dealing with those partly cloudy skies. Now, as for the water conditions, you guys can see in the footage as we get into it, it was pretty good water conditions, especially for reaction style baits. It wasn't too dirty, but it wasn't too clear either. It's kind of that nice solid mix, and it's, you know, probably 2 to 3 foot visibility, I would say. And then water temperatures were anywhere from 45 to 46, 47 degrees, depending on where you were at in your drift and whether you had more runoff in an area or not. So we've kind of got the stage laid out. That's where we were fishing, what the conditions were kind of like, and those were those factors that played in. Now let's actually get into the fish catch itself, and we'll start talking about rod, reel, line, and bait, and kind of how important some key aspects of what I was doing there is. So as you guys can see, we're just drifting down through here. I'm making casts at different targets along the bank, and one big key to what I was doing was making sure that I was really getting down there and hitting the depth range that I needed to hit, and that I was deflecting off every piece of cover that I could. So where we were actually fishing, there's a lot of big boulders, and those fish use those boulders as eddy points to sit behind and react to things that are getting drifted over them by that current. So for you guys that don't know what an eddy is, it's, you know, a place in the current that the water kind of slows down and is less turbulent. And a lot of times eddies are created by big boulders or big rocks, points that stick out, things like that. If you guys have ever trout fished or fished in a river or a stream, you'll see those areas. You'll have like a big rock, and then there'll be kind of a area of slack water behind it. That is an eddy. And so those fish would use those bigger boulders to sit behind and react to bait as they come over their head and was pushed by them using the current. And one big key thing for me was the crankbait that I was actually throwing. I was throwing a Strike King 3XD, and that 3XD allowed me to get into that depth range I wanted to hit and fish it very effectively. That 3XD will go just a little bit deeper than, say, a Bandit 300 or 200, but it doesn't dig as deep as, say, like a Spro rock crawler. This bait is really key for 8 to 12 foot of water, and it really excels in that 12-foot range. So let's go on into the fish catch here. Like I said, I'm deflecting off those rocks, deflecting off that cover, and you guys can see my rod tip hopping where I'm hitting all those rocks, and then the fish eats. And so that fish most likely was just hanging out behind a big old boulder, and when that crankbait come over its head, it saw an opportunity to react to something that looks like a bluegill or a bait fish or even a perch, because a lot of our lakes have perch in them, and it took that opportunity to just absolutely demolish this little crankbait. So as I actually hook into this fish, this is where rod and reel and line and even one of the modifications I made to this bait comes into effect. So as you guys can see here, I have it paused on this screen, there is a lot of bend in that rod, and that is where that moderate action of this cranking stick comes into effect. You want to have that moderate action for a few different things. Number one, it helps to drive treble hooks in. It helps to really just bury them into the fish's face, bury them into their mouth, so that you're not ripping big holes, because if you use too heavy of an action, you will rip holes in fish's mouths when you're fishing treble hooked baits like this crankbait. Another thing that it does is it helps to absorb the shock of that fish not only eating that bait and me setting the hook on it, but the shock that that current is going to put on that fish. So not only are you fighting a big angry fish that has lived in current its entire life, but you're also fighting the current that it's living in. So once you set the hook on that fish, it's going to come away from that eddy, it's going to come away from that rock, and as soon as that current hits it, you've got the pressure of the fish fighting against you and the current. So having that moderate action rod that can absorb that shock of that fish shaking its head and trying to get away from you, as well as that current, is super, super key. Rod I was fishing is one that you guys see all the time. 7-foot G-Rod Game Changer cranking stick. Had it paired with a 6-8-1 gear ratio Lew's Custom Pro with some 10-pound copolymer on there. This is my go-to cranking setup. I've made so many videos about it. I'll link some up below or up above and down below so you guys can go check them out. Now let's go on into the fish catch here, and you guys can see that fish gets out of that current and he is digging, and you guys can see that rod is doing a great job of absorbing those head shakes, absorbing that fish making those runs. It's also absorbing that current that's pressing up against that fish. And really, I didn't have to use my thumb drag here at any point, and fish comes into the boat. So really short-lived fight. So you guys can see, we'll go back over it again. I bring the fish up. Dad nets him, high fives, you know, whoopee, got him in the boat. This fish actually ended up going 410, so it's a 4-pound, 10-ounce smallmouth bass, which he was just a couple shad away from being a big old 5-pounder, which is freaking awesome, especially for this time of year and especially in that current. So key there, you guys can see that crankbait is turned completely sideways in that fish's mouth. And one big thing about this 3XD that I love, and it's something that you can do to these baits that I've not been able to do with many other small body crankbaits like this, is upsize the hooks on this thing. So with this little 3XD, if you're using the KVD short shank triple grip pin, the EWG treble hook, you can put a number 4 size hook on this thing. And when you're fishing current or you're fishing any kind of reaction style bite, that bigger than average hook just gives you a lot more grab. And so when that fish hits that thing, whether it's eating it good like this one did or just slapping at it, you've got a lot more hook there to grab a hold of that fish and be able to get those treble hooks into it. And then that's where your rod, reel, and line comes into play, and that rod can really drive in those treble hooks, really sink them in and get a good grip on that fish, and they're not going to get off. But as you guys can see here, really, really good smallmouth. You can see those treble hooks are not wanting to come out. And all that is just kind of one big system that comes into play. My entire cranking system is something that I feel like at this point, it is my perfect cranking system. I actually did a video titled My Perfect Cranking System, and it helps me to put fish like this into the boat. And really, when it comes to reaction style baits, I'm not saying you have to buy this rod and reel combination in particular. This is what is perfect for me, but find what is perfect for you. And I feel like those modern action rods, those glass infused rods, are where it's at when it comes to reaction bites with a crankbait. But yeah, that's it. That was the entire fish catch. It is amazing to me all the preparation that goes into about 30 seconds of a fight and 30 seconds of glory and putting those fish into the boat. But it's that preparation and that, you know, pre-thinking and preparation of getting all those pieces together that helps to put the big fish into the boat. And it could either be a personal best or just a really, really good quality fish like that smallmouth. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. Any questions or comments, please go leave them in the comment section down below. If you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell. It'll let you guys know when I put out all of my videos. Also, go down in the description. I'll have links to my partner like G-Rod, Lose, Strike King, AFCO. You guys can go check out all the stuff that I used in today's video and talked about. But as always, you guys are sweet. Thank you for watching.